Hello there, and welcome once again to Rebuilding the Collection, or Journeys with Jazz in Lockdown. I'm Paul Palmer. There's yet more to decide about my old cassette tape collection of jazz albums collected together when I was knee-high to a Jack Sparrow and with an intellect to match. And we're deciding which albums to throw away and which to keep forever in digital form and in a secure location. And speaking of security, will someone please call them on that man from down the line in Houston, Texas, who joins us today, Mr. Eric Blackman, friend and former colleague. Hello, Eric. How do you feel about having security called on you?
It used to happen when I was a young child, actually. I used to go into department stores with my mother and run away. And she would at least call the manager of that department. And I was in the habit of, as a 5, 6, 7-year-old, while she was dress shopping, I would see these curtains drawn. And I would open the curtain, and there would be an adult, partially clothed woman smiling down at me, because I must have been a cute little kid. And security should have been called at that point. So having said all that, which is not what you were asking for anyhow, I'm doing just fine.
Yeah, I mean, you have heard of the expression "too much information," haven't you?
No,
yes.
no, I live in the United States. We don't do TMI.
Great. Well, a reminder that we're discussing my cassette collection by album title in alphabetical order.
Right.
And that'll allow us to discuss different albums from the same artist in different episodes. Now, in our last episode, I think we were doing C's, weren't we? I thought we'd done them all, but you'll find out when I do the list that I've got one left over because I forgot. So now let's do that list. And it's right here. So here's the neglected C. It's called Cashin' In. Cash In without the G. Cashin' In, and it's by the Human Chain. That's on EG Records and came out in 1988. I can only find one D in my cassette tape collection, and that was James Moody, Don't Look Away Now, 1969, on the Prestige label. Then we come to Wayne Shorter, etc. So we're moving on to E's, and that's a Blue Note recorded in 1965, but not released until 1980. And another E, Andrew Hill, Eternal Spirit, and that's a 1989 on the Blue Note label. So, any observations, Eric, about that?
Well, I love the James Moody. I mean, the James Moody is just one of my long-standing go-tos as a saxophone player, jazz musician. James Moody, I came up to speed with later, first after all Coltrane introduced me to jazz itself, way back when with his album "A Love Supreme." But Moody, upon hearing Moody after Moody after Moody adventures in jazz, pulled me in. And on this particular album, he's working with the great Barry Harris, which for me sends up strong signals of fabulous playing, fabulous jazz integrity, steeped in jazz's history. I think Barry Harris is from the second wave of Detroit jazz musicians, which include Elvin Jones and others. Then he migrates himself to New York, and he's the pianist of choice for people like Dexter Gordon and James Moody and many others. And between Moody and Barry Harris on this album, I just love it.
Okay, well, we'll come to discussing them in detail a bit later on, but I think we ought to start with Cashin' In, as it is a C.
Sure.
It's a human chain album. I don't know if you're interested, or sorry, not interested, but are familiar at least with the band The Human Chain, which features Django Bates, the keyboard. I suppose you'd call him a keyboard player fundamentally, but he is a kind of multi-instrumentalist, isn't he, really? And then you've got Steve Arguelles, the drummer, and Stuart Hall, who's predominantly, again, a bass player, but plays all kinds of things. I've actually seen him play violin and various other bits and bobs.
Yeah.
Have you heard this Cashing In album, or have you heard The Human Chain in general?
I've not heard, I've heard them. I was aware of Julian's saxophone playing brother. Julian, the saxophone playing brother to Steve.
That's it, yeah.
Right, from the old days, my old days in England. And I have to confess that with American ears, New York American ears, when I heard this stuff, I had no idea what was going on.
Yes.
So,
well, we could make a few forays into trying to explain what it's all about.
sure.
The title track, Cashing In, I suppose it sets the store out. It starts off with this steel pan sort of synthesized sound. I don't know if it's actual steel pans. It could be. I think there are steel pans supposed to be on this album. And then there's loads of other synth sounds. It progresses on to another. There's another song which is called. Oh, sorry. It goes on to other sounds like a honky tonk piano and a toy piano sort of sound. And this sort of happens throughout the whole album. I mean, there's another track that sounds a bit like tin whistles or recorders playing.
So this band is a band that I'm not so familiar with. And when I first heard them, as I said a moment ago, with my American New York ears, I didn't know what was going on. Certainly not straight ahead. It's bringing in elements, and I think, as I hear most music, cultural elements of which I had very little familiarity. So jazz and jazz influences in the hands of others, transplanted outside of the original jazz country, America, to elsewhere around the world, come out sounding different, as they should.
Yeah, I have an issue with this album. What is it? It doesn't seem to settle into anything. You know, you can't sort of sit down and work out what the identity of it is. It's all frenetic. It's going everywhere and nowhere. And while these instrumentalists, Stephen and I suppose mostly Stuart and Django Bates, they are really talented. It's talent often to no purpose. It's not going anywhere.
It's a bunch of loose tubes.
Well, there you are. You've made reference there to the band they've come from.
I did a master's degree in music while in England. And I interviewed some musicians. I interviewed John Scofield, the guitarist, and Julian Joseph. I interviewed John Scofield by phone. I had met him in the past, and in any event, he had some very interesting things to say. Also, coming from the American experience regarding being on tour and playing gigs and speaking to many, many people in Europe. And discovering that when you take jazz across the pond and reapply it, as people inevitably will do elsewhere, you come out with things that are different. So the degree program I was working on was tying in culture to musical outcomes, which I thought was wonderful. Certainly there's the German school in classical music of Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven, and the Baroque German composers before them. And there are the Italians. And then long after the Romantic period closes out, come the French, Ravel and Debussy, who, due to cultural differences, and seeing the world differently come out with a brand newness in the world of classical music. So I think we have a different palette of colors and outcomes and values and musical situations on this album.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Eric. I guess I haven't listened to this album for about, I don't know, 30 odd years. Probably won't be listening to it in the next 30 odd years. So I'm afraid I'm going to say I really I respect the guys for what they're trying to do, but it's not for me. I'm sorry about that. And I think, is it your advice that we sort of have just let this one slip through?
Yes, I concur.
Okay, we better get on to the next one, which is the James Moody. And this is the one that you were referring to at great length. And I must admit, again, I've heard it just recently, and I really, really did enjoy it. It's called Don't Look Away Now. And let's just have a look at who's on this album. Well, we've got Moody himself, Barry Harris piano, Bob Cranshaw. There's a Barry Cranshaw electric bass, and Dawson drums, and there's a vocalist. There is a vocal track 4 on the album, which is called Hey Herb, Where's Alpert? I guess that's a reference to Herb Alpert.
Yes.
Herb Alpert, the kind of band leader.
Yes.
It's kind of quirky track, that.
Who's the vocalist?
Didn't I just do his name? Eddie Jefferson.
Oh my God, fantastic.
You know Eddie?
Yeah, Eddie Jefferson made some albums with the alto player Richie Cole and a host of others. So Eddie Jefferson, I think, also might have been responsible for James Moody's Mood for Love, famous tune of James Moody. He would put lyrics, as John Hendricks of Lambert, Hendricks and Ross fame would put lyrics to jazz for more recent groups like, what's the vocal group? Their name is slipping my mind. Lambert, Hendricks and Ross of the 1950s into the 60s. And then there was a vocal group, Manhattan Transfer.
Lovely
so the great Eddie Jefferson put lyrics, I believe, or John Hendricks, one of the two of those, put lyrics to the great Clifford Brown tune, Joy Spring, amongst many other tunes. Eddie Jefferson is the real deal. He's the real deal. He hung out with the beboppers. He went to jam sessions. He was on recording sessions. He has real jazz authenticity of the bebop, hard bop, post bop period.
Oh, that's great. If we look at this album now, it's I'm not too enamored of Don't Look Away Now, the title track, but Darwin the Red Fox, quite a nice blues. And there's a couple of standards on it. Is Hear Me a standard? I'm not sure. When I Fall in Love, that it's beautifully played. That's absolutely lovely.
Fantastic ballad. Yeah.
How would you describe James Moody's playing? It's very clear, warm sound, not over-imbued with any kind of raspiness, or it's just a full sound, isn't it?
He has his own palette of colors. You hear James Moody and you know it's James Moody. Whether it's alto, tenor, or certainly flute, he's got his own thing going after all. In the late 40s, he was recording with Tad Dameron and Miles Davis, and moving forward, playing throughout the 50s, I think into the 60s with Dizzy Gillespie. And he was right at the center of the storm, of the jazz storm, absorbing things. Very talented man. I think I'm recalling that he has hearing in only one ear, which always amazed me. I heard the story around the time that he came bundling up the steps to a West 48th Street music shop, singing Tina Turner's "What's Music Got to Do with It?" And he was delivering to us all in the shop a little bit of sarcasm. He was so bothered by Donna Summers and Tina Turner and that whole thing. It ran contrary to his own musical values. And he's a very humorous,
So
sardonic,
he was
witty.
referencing what's love got to do with that. I take it with that. Yeah.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to hear him talk about things, he's a very weighty, very funny, witty, humorous guy. But he was at the center of the jazz storm for so long with all the jazz immortals. And to hear him talk was just fantastic. There he was in the woodwind shop, and I just shut up and listened to everything he had to say.
So I think, besides being thoroughly nice bloke, a demon player as sax, and a lovely musical offering. This album, and I think
Incredible.
we'll say we'll keep it.
Absolutely.
So let's go on to the first of the E offerings. That's Wayne Shorter, and that is Etc. An album, that's kind of low key. It's not really that well known, and it's not referred to. It's not one, an absolute classic, but it's a decent album, isn't it? It's a pretty good album. As I say, it's released in '65. Sorry, it was recorded in '65, but not released until 1980. Have you heard this album? What do you think?
Yeah, I love it. It's lesser known and all of that, but the potent combination of Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter is
Some awesome players on there.
yeah, fantastic.
A lovely ballad on there called Penelope, which I kind of described as sort of the ultimate freeway music, driving along with a solo. You can just imagine your the roof down on your car, and you've got this, and you're just listening to this as you're driving along. Then Indian song at the very end. It's kind of a weird one, and it's got this riff, but then it's got this melody which seems at odds with this riff. It doesn't seem to time quite right. But if you hear it, if you go through listening to it, your brain performs some kind of osmotic process, and by the end of it, it just sounds exactly right. It's just amazing the way that's done musically. So there's a lot of invention of musical, techniques.
Absolutely. I think that's what was at the center of all the creativity with Mahler's second grade quintet with Herbie and Wayne. Those two get together and come up with these tunes. And because they're such potent voices as individuals and potent forces, and because they lift one another up to become greater than their separate component parts, it's one of those kinds of partnerships. It's just, I've got a friend that said that we'll buy everything and anything Wynton Marsalis ever had anything to do with. You can't go wrong with Wynton Marsalis. He feels the same about Miles Davis and all that. And I believe there's the same can be applied to Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this is another one that goes into our little collection. And let's move on to the final one then, in this little group of albums, and that is the Andrew Hill, and it's called Eternal Spirit. I don't know whether you know of Andrew Hill and what you think of him. I kind of like this. It's not, again, widely known, I would say. There's a variety of tracks on it. Pinnacle, I'm not so uh, enamored of. Oh, by the way, the personnel are, and it's got some. It's a quintet, I believe. It's got Bobby Hutcherson on vibraphone. It's got Greg Osby playing the alto sax. I'm just trying to look for the rhythm section, but I just can't find it right now. Oh yeah, here we are. Sorry. The bassist Rufus Reed, drummer Ben Riley, Andrew Hill himself completes the lineup. He's a composer, really. He's got a bit of compositional history, some kind of experimental kudos. He's actually writes quite avant-garde sometimes music, but this is easy. This is, I wouldn't say it's easy listening, but I'd say it's perfectly listenable, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's alternative stuff. I make a comparison with watching Prime Video or Netflix videos and rejoicing when there are actors involved who I've never heard of, who turn in a fantastic performance with a great script. It's refreshed by the whole experience of it. It's not the usual stable of actors, and the storyline departs from the usual predictable type of storylines. And so in Andrew Hill, you have someone who might have been on the periphery of the main key players of the time, but nonetheless has his own thing to add. It's refreshing. If you're a musician, listening to all this jazz stuff, which is why you might have the collection to begin with, this is refreshing. The rediscovery of it during our pandemic years is refreshing.
Yeah, so absolutely, I'd agree with you there. I mean, I can't. Well, lots of different tracks. I kind of think Greg Osby's playing is really sublime in places. I mean, you associate him with a bit like the M-Bass Collective and that sort of angularity, but here it's kind of just beautiful playing and tinged with a bit of angularity. But what tracks? Tail Feather, Spiritual Lover, all good tracks. Samba Rasta, quite an interesting one. It's got a bit of a Latin touch to it.
Yeah.
So what are we saying? We'll hold on to this one as well.
If I had it in my collection, I would.
Yeah, I think I am going to let that go forward into our ultimate collection.
Excellent.
So I think that kind of wraps us up for today. You'll have noticed there's nothing here from the 21st century or even the 1990s, obviously, because, cassette tapes are very much before that era. But I wonder whether there's anything, either D or E, that we can include. I have to admit, I couldn't find anything, a D or an E album. I'm sure there is one, and I should work harder for next time, but I couldn't find anything. How about yourself, Eric?
I couldn't find anything readily. I can think of players,
Yeah,
Miles Davis, Duke Ellington,
but
but
that,
I didn't readily find an album title with Deary.
yeah, I know. I made it. I haven't made it that easy for you. I'm sorry to say that the rules are slightly different.
No, it's
Uh,
okay.
uh, so if anyone listening to this program has any ideas about a jazz album beginning with either of the letters that we've discussed, C, I guess, D and E, please let us know. We'll be adding more information about how to contact us in the details about the program. But for now, you can send a tweet to @CollectionBill. That's at Collection Build, which is all one word. Well, if I can just get my script together and sort my life out, it's very difficult. Thanks for being with us today, and I hope you have enjoyed our deliberations. Today we've, pretty much taken most of the ones we were discussing. I think the human chain just came as a bit too much for us, and I've decided that won't go forward. Drop us a line if you agree with these decisions, or let us know if you have any suggestions of your own. Next time, we'll roll on to some new alphabetical offerings, so see you then. This has been Rebuilding the Collection. Thank you, Eric, for your help with this project so far.
Thank you.
And I'm Paul Palmer.